Before we get going with the news today, I just want to once again extend my deepest condolences to the family, friends, and fans of Jerry Jarrett, especially to his son, Jeff. I can't imagine what he's going through, and I can't imagine I can't imagine how reality will feel when it hits. But Jerry, the influence, the legacy, and everything that you did for the wrestling business will be felt for many, many years to come, and will continue to be felt, and it will never go away. In my opinion, it will never go away, because from being in the business at 7 years old to spending 50 years in the business and having a hand in developing talent from pretty much the 1970s all the way up to the modern era, it's impossible. It would be impossible to say that Jerry's influence will ever truly go away. And I just wanted to say before we got going, rest in peace, Mr. Jarrett. Godspeed, and thank you for everything you did for the wrestling business. But yesterday, we also had NXT, and 2 championship matches were heavily rumored. One was rumored, the other was confirmed, as next week on NXT, Jinder Mahal will challenge Braun Breaker for the NXT Championship. I don't know what's going to happen, but with the fact that, here's something, NXT will have a pay-per-view event before Stand and Deliver the first week in April, as Roadblock is back, and NXT will be going through, NXT stars will have to go through the Roadblock before they hit Stand and Deliver. It does seem to me that Roadblock is actually a special and not an official PLE for NXT, but it is still that Roxanne Perez specifically will have a Roadblock before Stand and Deliver, and that Roadblock is pretty big in the guise of Meiko Satomura. Jinder Mahal versus Braun Breaker next week, and Meiko Satomura will challenge Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship in about 3 weeks. The match is not official yet when it's happening, but Vic Joseph heavily indicated the likelihood of the match happening at NXT Roadblock on March 7th. So with that being said, we'll have to wait and see when it's actually made official. But it will be a banger of a match, as I occasionally say, with Roxanne Perez being tested against the legend of the wrestling business. I think, again, that for those fans who may not have seen NXT UK and are not very familiar with Meiko Satomura, it would be wise for WWE to use the footage that they have to maybe explain to the audience who Meiko Satomura is and why it is such a big deal that Roxanne Perez is fighting her for the NXT Women's Championship at NXT Roadblock on Tuesday, March 7th, if that is when it does happen. I will also say that I think a lot of people were surprised when Jinder Mahal, of all people, became the next challenge for Braun Breaker, but I think it was also the fact that they brought Jinder out there to put over the people that may not be the biggest fan of Braun at this point, and maybe rooting for Braun to lose the title to the modern day Maharaja. The one thing that Jinder said that I agreed with is that it always happens. Or, I don't think he said that officially, but he pointed out that after a while, fans always turn on baby faces, which is just something common in the business. But, I mean, I don't know if people are turning on Braun because of the fact that he is in the position that he's in and is still in the position that he's in, or and they're tired of him being the guy, and they wish that he would, when he lost the title to Dolph Ziggler last year, that would have changed and that he wouldn't have been the guy anymore. Or it's just the fact that they're tired of him winning, or whatever the case is. I don't really know, to be honest with you. But in my opinion, you do got to give Braun Breaker props for what he's been able to do in a short period of time. I'm not saying that I don't agree with the idea that Grayson Waller maybe should have been able to beat Braun Breaker and become NXT champion. I agree that Grayson Waller should have been the one to defeat Braun Breaker, but I also think that Carmelo Hayes could have been the one that defeated Braun Breaker. I also completely agree with that logic. Because, in my opinion, Carmelo Hayes should be the person to beat Braun Breaker. I'm not saying Grayson Waller shouldn't. I'm just saying that maybe in the most subtle way possible that Carmelo has his character a little bit more figured out, and that maybe NXT wanted to go a different way with Grayson Waller, which it seems like that different way is a feud with Shawn Michaels. Not necessarily seeing Shawn get back in the ring, but a feud with Shawn Michaels nonetheless. As Grayson Waller was removed from the building again last night after a confrontation with the Heartbreak Kid. So, again, it is unclear what's going to happen with Grayson Waller and Shawn Michaels, but what I can say is it does seem like that is what NXT, the way that NXT is going, as far as that's concerned. So I'm going to say that, in my opinion, we already know that JD McDonough versus Ilya Dragunov should be at Stand and Deliver. I think that this rivalry between HBK and Grayson Waller comes to a head at Stand and Deliver. Because I think it's going to keep building until then, and that will be the exact reason why Grayson Waller was not featured in the NXT Championship picture. And speaking of former NXT champions, though, former NXT champion Karrion Kross was on Josh Martinez's radio show. I forget the name of it, but I know it's on Z100. And he basically said, for lack of a better word, that he's frustrated with how things have gone since he returned, but knows that if he had his way, that once he is able to show his potential, that he is yet to show to the WWE Universe, that once he is able to show his potential, that everyone will know that Karrion Kross is in the position that he should be in, but that he has not been able to show everything that he has wanted to show as far as his potential is concerned. And once that does change, that, he basically called out the roster and said that because of how deep the roster is and how minimal the television time is, it makes it a little harder for somebody like him to stick out. But I think that I don't want to say that they should have had a plan for him when he came back and stuck to it. It's more Kross came back and immediately started feuding with Drew McIntyre while Drew was feuding with Roman Reigns. And it's like, no, we'd rather see Drew feud with Roman. And now, after his feud with Rey Mysterio seems to be done. I don't know if his feud with Rey Mysterio is over because Rey Mysterio was injured. But what I do know is that it went nowhere. That's the, I don't want to say starting and stopping, but it just seems like there's no clear plan right now for Karrion Kross. And I think that after WrestleMania, they need to sit down and come up with a plan for certain talent. Maybe have Rob Fee come up with a long-term plan for Karrion Kross to get him more a clearer direction or more of a clearer direction, and let us see what Karrion Kross, the potential that Karrion actually has. But with that being said, we got more news to get to in the next video, so I will see you then in our next news video.